back to my channel. My name is Darian and today I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read in September. So in September I managed to read 7 books, which is a lot for me, so I'm pretty happy with that. I also participated in 2 readathons in September. I did Becca's Bookoplathon and I also did the Magical Readathon hosted by G from Book Roast, and I did vlog the whole month, so if you want to check out my real-time thoughts of these books, you can go check out those vlogs because I do discuss these books in detail in those vlogs as well. So if you missed those, definitely go check them out because I definitely go into more detail in those vlogs. But without further ado, let's just get into the books that I read in September. So the first book I read in September was actually a promotion that I was doing for Candlewick Press through bookstagrammars.com, and that was for the book Ferryman by Claire McFall. And I read the art copy of this book, but they sent me a finished copy, which is so beautiful. Look at this book. The cover is so beautiful. So thank you so much to Candlewick Press and bookstagrammars.com for sending me the art copy and the finished copy. So this book follows this girl named Dylan, and at the beginning of the book she is in a train that ends up crashing, and at first she wakes up and no one else is in the train. She's the only one left. So she just assumes that, you know, help came and saved everyone in the train and they just missed her. So she leaves the train and tries to find where everybody went, but she can't find them. The only person she can find is this mysterious boy named Tristan, who says that he knows where everybody went and that she just has to come with him. So she ends up following him, but things are starting to not really make sense because they're literally the only people around. She can't find anyone else that was on the train. So he eventually tells her that she ended up dying on the train and he is her ferryman who has to lead her across this wasteland that essentially is bringing her to like the next step in the afterlife basically. So this book, the thing with this book is that I think if I had read this when I was like 13, 14, maybe 15, I think I would have ate this book up. I think I would have loved it so much. I think this book was originally written in 2013 and now it's being re-released to North American audiences, and I think you can kind of tell that it was written in 2013. Like, it just reminded me of a lot of the YA fantasies that I did read when I was like 14, 15. So like I said, if I had read this then, I think I would have ate this up. Like, one thing I will say about this book is it reminded me a lot of Twilight, but if Twilight was less problematic, because the main characters reminded me so much of Edward and Bella, especially Dylan. She reminded me of Bella a lot, and I think just where the story goes just kind of reminds me of Twilight. Like, there's no vampires in this or anything, but I find it has a lot of similarities. So I think if you like Twilight but you didn't like how problematic it was, then I would say pick this up. Like, I think you would genuinely enjoy this if you like Twilight. I personally don't love Twilight, so I didn't love this book, but I think if you are a younger reader, like I said, 12, 13, 14, something like that, I think you would really love this book. And I've seen a lot of people compare it to like the types of YA fantasies that they would read when they were that age. So if you're also looking for kind of a nostalgic fantasy that you used to read, then I think this is also a great book to pick up. But for me personally, it didn't work for me, but I can definitely see certain readers, especially younger readers, really, really loving this book. So to you guys, I recommend it. I could see people falling in love with Tristan. Again, he wasn't really my type, but yeah. So I personally gave this book 2 stars, but again, I think if you're a younger reader, I think this would really appeal to you. So thank you again to Candlewick Press and bookstagrammars.com for working with me and sending this my way. So the next book I read in September was The Kiss Quotient by Helen Hoang. I actually ended up reading all 3 books that are in this series by Helen Hoang, so I'll talk more about those after, but The Kiss Quotient is the first book and it follows this girl named Stella who has never really been good at dating or sex, and she thinks it's because she's autistic, so she kind of has social anxiety. She never really knows how to properly talk to other people, so she thinks that the best way to help this is if she hires a male escort to teach her how to have sex. She's also feeling pressured from her parents who want her to get married soon and have children so that they can have grandchildren. So she hires a male escort named Michael, and as you can probably assume, they end up falling in love. And I really, really liked this book. I was really excited because I'd heard so many good things, and of course the autism rep in this book was amazing because Helen Hoang is autistic herself, so it's an own voices story, and I thought it was written really well. I also really loved the fact that Stella kind of realizes that the situations she's had with men, it wasn't her fault that they didn't end well, it was the men's fault because men didn't know how to treat her properly until now, and Michael just treats her so well. I love Michael. I mean, my main issue with this book is the ending, like the whole third act breakup. It relied heavily on the miscommunication trope, and I hate that trope so much. And like in this book, it was a little ridiculous. Like they kept kind of assuming what the other person was thinking, and so they're like, well, I'm fine without them because they think this, even though like they're just assuming things, and if they had just talked to each other, everything would have been fine. But that was the only thing really that bothered me in this book. But aside from that, I really loved it, and I think it definitely lived up to the hype, and I gave it 4 stars. The next book I read in September was Darkrise by C.S. Pacat. This cover is very shiny. I actually got the arc through NetGalley because of HarperCollins Canada. I'm part of their influencer program, so I was able to get an e-arc of this book, but then they also sent me the physical arc, so that's very exciting. But I'm gonna read the Goodreads synopsis of this book because I have no idea how to explain this, so I'm just gonna read what it says on Goodreads. So it says, the ancient world of magic is no more, its heroes are dead, its halls are ruins, and its great battles between light and dark are forgotten. Only the stewards remember, and they keep their centuries-long vigil, sworn to protect humanity if the Dark King ever returns. 16-year-old dockboy Will is on the run, pursued by the men who killed his mother. When an old servant tells him of his destiny to fight beside the stewards, Will is ushered into a world of magic where he must train to play a vital role in the oncoming battle against the dark. As London is threatened by the Dark King's return, the reborn heroes of villains of a long-forgotten war begin to draw battle lines. But as the young descendants of light and dark step into their destined roles, old allegiances, old enmities, and old flames are awakened. I feel like it should say enemies, not enmities. Anyways. Will must stand in the last heroes of the light to prevent the fate that destroyed their world from returning to destroy his own. So the synopsis is pretty vague also, but I feel like it's best going into this book not knowing too much, because throughout this whole book you're following Will, and as he's kind of discovering this world of the stewards and like the past with the Dark King, you're discovering everything along with him. You're also slowly starting to discover things about his past, because even he doesn't know too much about his past. But like as the book goes on, oh my god, as the book goes on, you start to find out more about his past. And also the synopsis doesn't mention her, but there's another main character named Violet, and you're also learning about her and her past and how her and Will strike up this friendship. And like, I don't want to say too much because I really feel like it's best going into this not knowing too much, but I will say that the plot twists in this book are some of the best plot twists I think I've ever read. Especially, well, first of all, there's something that happens like a little past halfway through this book, and I was so surprised because I've never seen like an author take such a huge chance in a YA fantasy. Like, C.S. Pacat, what were you doing? Like, something pretty huge happens in this book nearish the end, and oh my god, it was crazy. And also like the last plot twist of this book, I could not believe what I was reading. It was crazy. So I would say throughout this whole book I was really enjoying it. There were definitely parts that I found kind of slow, so before I got to the end I was thinking I would give this a 3.5 because I was really enjoying it, but I found some parts kind of dragged. But then the ending was just so crazy, so I bumped it up to a 4 stars. I really enjoyed this book, and I'm pretty sure this came out at the end of September, so you can all get it now and you can talk to me about that ending. And I'm so excited for the next book to come out because I need to know what happens in the next book. And yeah, so thank you to HarperCollins Canada for sending me the e-arc and the physical arc, and I definitely recommend you guys pick up this book because oh my god. The next book I read was actually a book that I had to read for school, so I'm not going to talk too much about it because I don't really want to talk too much about this book, but it's called The Sorrows of Young Werther, written by Goethe, and this book was written, I think, in the 1700s, and it's really short. It's like less than 150 pages, I think. And it's basically these letters that Werther is sending his friend, who I already forgot his name, and he's talking about he just moved into this town and he met this woman and he instantly fell in love with her, but the woman is engaged. And the whole book is just him writing these letters to his friend about how he can't have this woman and he's very sad. And then there's a bunch of other things, and yeah, so it was fine. I don't know, I thought it was a bit boring, but also if it weren't for the discussions we had in our class, like, I think I probably would have given this book just 2 stars because it was pretty boring. But also like there were a lot of points that were brought up in our class and I was like, oh okay, that's kind of interesting. So I ended up giving this 3 stars. It was fine. I don't know, I wouldn't personally recommend it, especially there's a huge trigger warning for suicide in this book, so definitely stay away from this if that is a trigger for you. But yeah, it was fine. I don't really have much to say about it, but I read it, so I figured I would mention it. The next book I read in September was Like a Love Story by Abdi Nazemian. This was the Winer's Book Club pick for September and our live show. I'm pretty sure this video is going to be going up before we have our live show. So our live show is happening on October 7th at 7 p.m. EST on Sasha's channel. So stay tuned for that, and if you read it, I can't wait to talk about this book with you guys. But this book basically follows this group of teens living in New York City in the 1980s during the height of the AIDS crisis, and you're mainly following this boy named Reza, who was born in Iran and has since moved to Toronto and now to New York, and he is slowly discovering that he might be gay, but he wants to hide this from everyone, especially his family, because they're not sure how he would react, and especially with the AIDS crisis going on, he is really scared to come out. So he ends up meeting these two friends named Judy and Art, who are like super close best friends, and Art is openly gay and Judy is straight, and so he kind of strikes up this friendship with them and ends up starting to date Judy even though he's gay, and Art is pretty sure that he knows Reza is gay, but Reza hasn't said anything, so it just creates this very troublesome dynamic between these three, and like you're reading it and you know it's not going to end well with them. And also on top of that, Judy's uncle has AIDS, and it's so sad because like Art is very close with Judy's uncle, and so Reza also becomes close with the uncle, and like there's just this overwhelming sense of sadness and dread in this book, so it definitely made it hard to read at times, and there's a lot of decisions that the characters make that I kind of had a problem with, but I also understood why they made these decisions. So I was having a hard time reading this book, and at first I wasn't really enjoying it because like I was just so uncomfortable, but then by the end I just grew to love these characters so much, and it was so sad. So I mean, obviously trigger warnings for like illness and death, also trigger warnings for homophobia and fat phobia in this book, but in the end I really loved this book. I think the writing is definitely the strongest part of this book. I really loved Abdi Nazemian's writing, and I'm very excited to read anything else he writes, and I ended up giving this 4.5 stars, and I'm very excited to talk about it with my fellow winers because I think we all enjoyed it. Well, enjoy is not the right word, but I think we all liked it. So if you've read it, definitely stay tuned for our live show. I'll leave our Twitter link down below as always. But yeah, 4.5 stars. So the next book I read, continuing on with my Helen Hoang binge, was The Bride Test by Helen Hoang, which is the second book in this Kiss Quotient series. And this book follows Kai, who is Michael's cousin from the first book, and you kind of see him a bit in the first book, but not really. And Kai is also autistic, and you're following him. You're also following Esme, who is living in Vietnam, and Kai's mother ends up traveling there and meets Esme and is like, hey, I'm looking for a wife for my son. Do you want to be his bride? And she's like, okay, because her family is kind of living in poverty. She also has a young daughter and she's a single mom, so she figures if she can find a husband and move her family to America, then that would be a better life for her family. So she ends up taking his mom up on this proposition, goes to America, meets Kai. They don't really get along at first, but then they end up falling in love, obviously. So I did not like this book very much. I really did not like Esme. She never warmed up to me. I found her really annoying, and not like some of the things she did in this book. I was like, why? Please, why? And like Kai bothered me too sometimes, but I thought he deserved way better than Esme. Yeah, I didn't love it. Like, I also found this one, like, obviously when I read an adult romance, I know what I'm getting into. I am prepared to read these steamy scenes, and like in the Kiss Quotient they bothered me a little bit, but it was fine, you know, I'm expecting it. I found this one was like 10 times more sexual than the Kiss Quotient because Kai was horny like all the time, and I was like, please. And obviously this is just a me thing, like I know everyone else seems to love, you know, more sex the better, but for me I was just like, please. I was also listening to all these books, so like hearing these books while I was on the train, I was like, oh my god. So that definitely bothered me. And just Esme, I never really liked her, so I gave this book 2 stars. It didn't come close to the Kiss Quotient for me. No. So yeah, didn't love this one, unfortunately. And then the last book I read in September was by far my favorite book of the month, even though I had such a hard time reading this book because it was so depressing, but that is The Heart Principle by Helen Hoang. And you might be thinking, isn't this another romance? Why was it depressing? Listen, I need to emphasize to you guys how sad this book is. Oh my god, I cried so much listening to this book. So you're following this girl named Anna, and she is really struggling in where she is in her life right now because she plays the violin, and she had like a huge burst of success at one point because a video where she played at a concert ended up going viral, and she ended up getting a lot of this attention, but the attention was too much for her, and so she's kind of been really struggling with her music and also just her life in general. Like, she's been trying to play this specific piece, but every time she messes up, she has to start back from the beginning because she feels like if she messes up, she doesn't deserve to continue, which like that part really resonated with me because I feel like that with I'm not a musician, but I feel like that with a lot of things in my life. She's just really struggling. And also her boyfriend of I think 5 years is like,
hey, I've decided that we should have an open relationship because I'm pretty sure I want to marry you, but I just want to be sure. So I'm gonna go date some other women and then we'll come back to this, okay? But I don't expect you to date anyone because I don't think you can handle that, but I can. So skedaddle.
So he sucks. So she's going through a lot, and she ends up meeting Quan, and Quan is Kai's brother and Michael's cousin, and Quan was my favorite part of both the Kiss Quotient and especially the Bride Test. He has a pretty big role in the Bride Test, and I was so excited for his book, and he did not disappoint. I love Quan so much, and at the beginning of the book you find out about something that Quan has been struggling with for like the past couple of years, which really surprised me. And it was really sad, and so they end up meeting, and it's kind of like they were exactly what each other needed at this point in time. And I know the romance was a bit insta-love, but like I loved them so much. I thought they were perfect for each other. I loved how Quan helped Anna and how she helped him, and I was also just really, really proud of Anna and her character development through this book because there's something that happens about halfway through the book that involves one of her family members, and it's just a really hard thing for her to deal with, and her family just does not treat her very well, especially her sister. I hate her sister. I wish her a very die. So just thinking about it like makes me want to cry. So I cannot emphasize how sad this book is to you, okay? Do not be fooled by the pretty cover. I know it's beautiful. Do not be fooled by the other 2 books in the series. This book is really sad. It goes into some really sad things. Some of the trigger warnings in this book include suicide, ideation, depression, ableism, sterility, illness, and death of a parent. Like, it goes through a lot. It's so sad, but it's so well done, and I know like this book is written in the first person and the other 2 books in this series are written in third person, and I know Helen Hoang said that this book was like semi-autobiographical for her, and so that's why it's written in the first person, and like you can definitely tell that her heart was just really in this book, and I thought it was just written so well. It was leagues above The Bride Test, and like The Kiss Quotient I thought was like just a fun romance, but this book was just genuinely so amazing, so well written, and I had to give it 5 stars because of the emotions that it brought out of me. It was so good, so I highly recommend this book, but I just want to make sure you know how hard it was to read, so only read this book if you feel like you are okay to do so. I cannot stress this enough, okay? I know I'm laughing. It's just because I'm nervous. But yeah, it was just so good. Probably one of my favorite books of the year, honestly. I really, really loved it. So yeah, 5 stars, amazing, best book of the month, unstoppable, show-stopping, never been done before, all of those adjectives.
Talented, brilliant, incredible, amazing, show-stopping, spectacular, never the same, totally unique, completely not ever been done before, unafraid to reference or not reference, put it in a blender, shit on it, vomit on it, eat it, give birth to it.
So those are the 7 books that I read in September. Let me know what your favorite book in September was, or if you've read any of these books and what you thought about them. But that's it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys soon with another video soon. Bye!